y'all? Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how I make my classic sourdough loaf. I've already made a recipe video on TikTok, but I thought I'd hop on here and show y'all how it's done. There are so many different ways to make sourdough, but I'm just going to show you what I find easiest and the best. So let's get into it. You always want to start with an active sourdough starter. You can tell it's active once it doubles in size. Use a rubber band or a marker to mark your jar from when you first feed it, and then when it's risen to double the size, that's when it's ready to use. You can feed your starter with a 1:1:1 ratio. Basically what that means is you're using equal parts starter, flour, and water. So for example, if you have 50 grams of starter, you would add 50 grams of bread flour and 50 grams of water. Mix that up and wait for it to rise. But recently I've switched and I start with 50 grams of starter, then I add 60 grams of bread flour and 50 grams of water. Basically, I'm just adding a little more flour to get a thicker starter. For me, I found that it rises faster and a lot more. So my starter is active and ready. Come over here, I'll show you what to do. Your active sourdough starter should have kind of like a web-like texture, and we're gonna add 60 grams of that to our bowl. I recommend using a 4 to 5 quart bowl, and it can be glass or stainless steel. I prefer glass, so I can link this one down below for you. Then we're gonna add 340 grams of room temperature filtered water. You could also just use bottled spring water, just make sure it is room temperature. Now we're gonna mix that water and starter together. I use this dough whisk, but you could use a regular whisk too. And we're gonna whisk this until it looks kind of frothy and milky, just like so. And now we're gonna add our bread flour. I use the King Arthur brand, it's my favorite, but we're gonna go ahead and add 500 grams of that, and then add 10 grams of salt, and then we're gonna start to mix all of these ingredients together. All right, now that it's mostly combined, I like to go in with my hands to actually knead it all together, just to get everything nice and incorporated. And don't worry, it will be a mess, but that's totally okay. Got a nice shaggy dough ball. It's not gonna look like anything perfect. This is exactly how you want it to be. Now we're gonna cover with a tea towel and let it rest for 1 hour on the counter. I'll see you then. All right, it's officially been 1 hour. Now we're gonna start our stretch and folds. You're gonna wet your hands and then start by taking one side of the dough. I'll give y'all a better angle in a second, but you're gonna lift and drop it over itself. Take the next section and lift, drop it over itself. Spin your bowl, take the next section, stretch and fold. And this last section, stretch and fold. And as you can see, it's already starting to look more like a dough ball. We're gonna do these stretch and folds 3 more times. So cover it back up and wait 30 minutes to an hour. All right, it's been about an hour. Let's do our second set of stretch and folds. Stretch and fold, stretch and fold, stretch and fold. Last one. Perfect. Cover it back up and let it rest for 30 more minutes. All right, it's been about 30 more minutes. Time for a third set. Wet your hands and we're gonna stretch and fold, stretch. Make sure you don't stretch it too high where it rips, and fold. You're basically making the gluten stronger by doing this, and it's building structure in your dough. Third set is done. Cover it back up and let it rest for 30 more minutes. Alrighty, it's been 30 more minutes. Time for our last set of stretch and folds. Wet your hands, stretch and fold, stretch and fold. By now you should have a beautiful looking dough ball. There we go. Here's what she's looking like. Now we're gonna cover it back up, and it needs to double in size. This is called the bulk fermentation process, and it could take anywhere from 5 to 10 hours depending on how cold your house is. We keep our house around 75 to 80 degrees during the day. With that, it does rise pretty quickly for me, more around the 5-hour mark. But if your house is pretty cold, it's gonna take probably a lot longer. But if you wanna speed up the process, you can pop it in the oven. Don't turn the oven on, just stick it in there with the light on, which is what I'm gonna do anyway. I'll see you guys when it's ready. Alrighty. It's been about 6-ish hours. She is ready for the final cold proofing stage. It's super jiggly and bubbly and looks about doubled in size. So let's prep this for the fridge. You're gonna wanna have a banneton basket. I actually have 2 different sizes, one for an oval loaf and a round loaf. I got these as a set. I will link them down below so you guys can get it too. So we're just gonna dump this out. Sometimes you gotta coach it out. Oh yeah. Go. Sometimes I have some left in the bowl and I'll just kind of scrape it out, slap it back on there. Sprinkle a little bit of bread flour on your surface. And now we're gonna shape. Ideally, you don't want to pop the bubbles you just formed. So I'm just gonna do some push and pulls, push and pull. This is just building tension, which creates a better shape for your loaf. Push and pull. See, we got some nice air bubbles on the top. I'm gonna flour my banneton. So I'm just gonna pick her up. Upper end, seam side up, tuck her together. Here's what she looks like. So now is the cold proofing stage. You're gonna cover it back up and pop it in the fridge overnight. Anywhere from like 8 to 10 hours should be good. But yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. All right guys, it's the next day and it's finally time to bake. So we're gonna pop our Dutch oven in the oven while the oven preheats. So this is gonna be nice and hot once we stick our sourdough in, but you're gonna wanna set it to 450. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in there. And we're not gonna pull our sourdough out of the fridge until our oven is completely preheated. Then we're gonna score it, bake it, and we'll be good to go. All right, our oven is preheated. It's time to bake. Pull our sourdough out. I usually name my sourdoughs. Comment in the chat what this one should be named. I have these little silicone baking mats. You could use parchment paper. I just like these better. I feel like they're a little bit easier. I will link all the tools that I've used in this video down below for you guys. So let's score our dough. We're gonna flour our silicone mat or parchment paper with some bread flour. Plop your sourdough out, and the reason we want it cold is so it's more firm, so it's easier to score. And then I like to flour the surface of my dough. I really feel like it makes the design pop. And then you're gonna wanna have a scoring tool or a razor blade, and we're gonna start with one deep cut halfway across the dough. This is gonna help the dough to expand and get a good spring. And now we're gonna do our design. You could actually search on Google different scoring designs because there are so many, but this is just what I like to do. So I'll make 3 shallow cuts into the loaf, and then I'll make a wheat pattern on all 3. It's really easy, and I think it turns out super cute. All right, it's officially time to bake. I'm gonna set this to the side. Let's grab our preheated Dutch oven. Be extra careful, but just set your sourdough right on in there. Make sure your flaps are outside of this. Pop your lid back on. Now we're gonna pop it in the oven for 40 minutes. Something that I personally find really important that I don't see a lot of people doing is sticking a baking sheet on the rack under your Dutch oven. Doing this is gonna help the bottom of the bread to not be too brown. And there we go. All right, it's been about 40 minutes. Let's pull it out. She is looking so good already, so we're gonna pop it back in with the lid off for 5 to 10 more minutes. All right, it's been about 5 more minutes, so a total bake time of about 45 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it out. Wow! This risen part of the dough is called the ear. You want that to kind of perk up, which does indicate that you got a good spring in your dough. Now the final step, and probably the most difficult, is waiting an hour for it to completely cool. It's really important that you don't cut into it too early, because then you'll end up with like a really gummy texture. So you want to make sure to let it cool as hard as it is. I'll see you in an hour. Our sourdough is completely cooled. The bottom is not too brown. And there you have it. You have a delicious sourdough loaf. Of course, we have to taste it together. Bread cutter. I'm not going to use this yet. I want to get to the middle so we can see the crumbs. You can see the texture of our crumb is light and airy and fluffy, which is exactly what you want. Let's cut a piece. It's super moist, really airy. I'm gonna take a little bit of my homemade butter, a little bit of that, and some honey, of course, and a tiny bit of flaky salt. Look how good that looks. Cheers. It's perfect. Hopefully this video helped you out on your sourdough journey and with making your very first loaf. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.